Hello everyone, I'm Kat from the Littlestown Library of the Adams County Library System, and welcome to our Summer Quest Tiny Art for Adults and Teens. Our theme this summer is Color Our World, so we are doing a triptych or three summer-related paintings. So since this is taking place close to Shark Week, we are doing a shark painting. So if you signed up for an art kit, then you will receive the following: one blank 4x4 canvas, a tiny easel, one paintbrush, and then paint pots with the following colors: black, white, and then three different shades of blue. The first will be ultramarine or dark blue, sort of a middle shade or cobalt blue, and the lightest and brightest is cerulean blue. If you are using your own colors, your own paint supplies, that is totally fine. You are welcome to do so. So you might not have specifically ultramarine, cobalt, and cerulean, but as long as you have a dark blue, a mid-range blue, and a light blue, then you will be fine. I also recommend that you have a cup or some other kind of container to put water in, so that way you can clean your brush between colors. You should also put down some newspaper or paper towels, so that way you don't get paint everywhere, and have a paper towel handy to help clean your brush between colors. If you would like, you are also welcome to have a paint palette, which can be an actual paint palette like from the dollar store, a paper plate, or a plastic lid that doesn't go to anything in case you want to mix more subtle gradients of colors. So without further ado, let's get painting. Alrighty, so the first thing we will want to do is get our ultramarine blue, or our darkest blue, and sorry, I was just checking the light there because it looks a little bit lighter on camera than it does in real life. But anyway, so we're gonna want to put the ultramarine around on the corners, across the top, and we're basically kind of making this big circle with our different shades of blue, because we're kind of doing this picture from the perspective of if you were, you know, in the water, you're just, you know, scuba diving or something like that, and you look up and silhouetted against the surface is one of the most frightening silhouettes that you would probably see in the ocean, which would be a shark. Although I will say that sharks actually generally are not aggressive unless provoked. There are some exceptions, of course, but most of the time, you know, you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. Obviously, they've been demonized in the media and everything. Thank you, Jaws. Beautiful movie, but also did huge amount of damage to sharks. And so generally, you know, your best way to avoid a shark is to avoid swimming in waters where sharks are known to frequent. So, but most of them, they're going to leave you alone unless they're super hungry, or they happen to be a particularly aggressive species. Which I'm sure if you are watching any Shark Week stuff, you might be learning about that, but be aware that some of that might be sensationalized. So also be sure to check out like documentaries and things like that. Especially from like scientists who actually study sharks. So make sure you get the edges of your canvas. And once you have the corners and edges covered, then you want to clean your brush and get your cobalt and then blend that along the edges of the ultramarine and get that all nice and swirled together. Again, slowly closing the circle here. Okay. And again, the circle doesn't have to be like super strict or anything. This is just a general, again, we're just sort of blending. It's okay if a little bit of like white shows through because we can always like cover that up with like ripples or things like that. But it's better if you kind of make sure that your brush strokes are all smooth and uniform and covering up those things. So then once you have that blended, then clean your brush again. And then we're grabbing some of the cerulean, or the lightest blue. So we'll go ahead and put that here. Again. Blending. And then you want to get a little dab of white to kind of lighten it up, kind of bring that in. And just kind of bring that around. Okay. Clean your brush. I'm gonna get a little more white here. And kind of now I'm going to go back over. My brush doesn't have any paint on it. It is very slightly damp. And then I'm just going to go over the whole thing and just make nice smoothing strokes to sort of smooth things out. If you feel like you need to add more paint, like I feel like I need a little bit more like ultramarine out here on the edge, then you can get some of that. And again, just keep your movements nice and smooth. And I feel like I need a little bit more cobalt here, so I'm gonna smooth that into the cerulean. Because you don't really want like sharp lines, like demarcating the different colors. You want them all kind of swirling into each other. Because that's the way that like light and water work. You know, everything is all kind of swirly and indistinct because of the medium. So And right now my brush doesn't really have anything on it. I'm just kind of smoothing things out. Alrighty, so once you have that looking kind of like you want, which I'm pretty satisfied with how that's looking, then you will want to let it dry completely because we are going to be putting on our shark silhouette next, and you really don't want to let that the black and the blues sort of like blend together. That would be bad. Well, not bad. It would be undesirable for the effect we are trying to achieve. So we're going to go ahead and let that dry, depending on how much paint you have on there, 5 to 10 minutes, and then we will come back for our shark. All right, so now that that has dried, we are going to get black. And if you happen to have a stencil, you are certainly welcome to use that. I'm just going to be freehanding this because usually sharks are pretty simple to kind of paint. Like, they're not like a really complicated animal to paint there. So I'm going to use just the edge of my brush. If you have a fine tip brush, you can use that as well. And I'm just going to do the basic shape, which is kind of a oblong sort of bullet sort of shape. I'm just getting the main body first. And then kind of bring it into taper. Remember that sharks are fish. They have gills. They breathe solely underwater. They don't have lungs like dolphins and such. So doing a basic fish shape is good. Now, however, remember, since we're looking at them from the bottom, you're not going to see, their tails that we're going to be looking at, they're going to be turned sideways. We're not going to see the usual like scythe sort of shape that we would see if we were looking at them from the side. And their fins are not, when they swim, their tails move side to side like a fish rather than up and down the way that like a dolphin or a whale does. So they're going to look a little bit different when we're looking at them from the bottom. So okay, I'm gonna get a little bit more paint here, and I'm gonna fill in more of the body. And then going into the tail fin. So we'll see a little bit of the fluke. Well, I guess they'd be fins rather than flukes. Flukes are for the for like whales and dolphins and things. Whales and dolphins who are mammals, not fish. So I think these are just fins rather than flukes. But so you can see we're going to see a little bit of the bottom of their fin as they're swimming past. So you can see a little bit of that. And then remember that sharks also have this smaller like triangle fin back here that helps stabilize them in the water. So they have a fin back there. Basically just little triangles. And then they have the larger, more familiar looking fins up here. Get a little more black. we go. Now I do feel like I've put my fins up a little bit, like the side fins up a little bit too far on the body. So I'm actually going to go ahead and extend the upper portion of the body out a little bit more. So I'm going to just do this. And again, I'm still using just the side of my brush and moving nice and slow to bring that shape to a point. There we go. Look at that. So again, if you want to use a come on, cat word. If you want to use a stencil, that's the word I was looking for. If you want to use a stencil that you can find that is of a shark with a view from underneath, an underneath silhouette, or even a top-down silhouette, it doesn't really matter since we're just doing this all in black, then that's totally fine. Most sharks actually do have a lighter underside. But again, we're looking at like some extreme light there, so that's why we're just painting it black, and it's also simpler. So at this point, you can decide if you want to include another shark, or if you would rather just keep it the one shark. That is totally fine. I kind of like my solitary shark. There's a lot of sharks that are solitary hunters, but others will hunt in packs. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna get a little bit of black paint on my brush, and I'm going to add some little fish. So I'm not going to make them super distinct. They're just basically little just little marks here. Because again, we're kind of seeing them from a distance. Kind of fleeing away from the shark. And you can put as few or as many as you want. You don't have to. Just remember the fish do kind of swim in schools, so they are going to probably, unless they're like really big fish, again, like sharks and such. And you can make like some of them a little bit like blobbier, just kind of indicate that they're a different like species or something. And just remember to try to make them go off the screen a little bit, off the canvas a little bit. So that just makes it a little bit more dynamic. Kind of makes the ocean feel a little less empty. And then I'm going to clean my brush really well, and I'm going to get some white, and I'm just going to add a few little like light squiggles of water glinting is basically what I'm trying to do. Now you can see that first one kind of looked a little bit thick, so I might have to like adjust that. But so just light little shimmers in the water. And I'm gonna get a little bit of cerulean just to kind of ease that one up a bit. See there, I used a little bit too much cerulean, so I'll get a little bit of white and just ease that back up again. And again, all of this is to just kind of indicate that there is movement in the water, that it's not static. Whoops, had a little bit ultramarine where I shouldn't have had it. Oops. It's okay. We've got white. White is the great. White and black can be the great equalizer when it comes to painting. They are very useful at lightening or darkening whatever you need to. So again, if there's something you end up not liking, you can always use another color to kind of equal it out a little bit. There we go. So you can see, especially more from a distance, there's a bit of movement, there's a bit of, oops. The water is not static, there's sunlight glinting. With that. And again, you can see that I had a little bit too bold in a couple spots, and that's okay, because again, I can take like my cobalt and ease it down a little bit. And there we go. So we have a wonderful shark for our Shark Week. I just kind of did just sort of a generic sort of shark. I didn't really have a specific species in mind. If you want, and most sharks like don't necessarily have a distinctive shape like in silhouette form, unless you're looking at like a hammerhead. Hammerhead sharks, as the name implies, have a very hammer-like shaped head. So if you wanted to do like that, then you would have to, I would recommend either using a reference photo or finding a stencil in order to get that silhouette correct, because I'm just using a very generic kind of shape here. You know, it could be a tiger shark, it could be a great white, could be a sand shark. You know, there's multiple different species that this could be, and I'm not committing to any one in particular. So that's why, but again, if you want to use a more distinctive shape, then I would recommend getting like a stencil or something like that if you really if you want to go all out in that regard. I'm just doing a couple little tiny touch-ups here with the paint. I was kind of tidying up my shark a little bit, making the making because the thing with sharks is they are very crisp. They do have very sharp, crisp lines. So I was trying to make sure that kind of tidying that up a little bit, making the nose a little more pointed, kind of smoothing out the fins, and all that. But we shall not let perfect be the enemy of the good. So I will call it here. Again, if you want to share what you have painted with us, please do. We love seeing how your paintings have turned out. And thank you so much for joining us for our Shark Week Tiny Art for Adults and Teens.